Hi everyone, welcome to Everything Dog Training Podcast with me, John McGuigan, Glasgow dog trainer and behaviour consultant. Welcome back if you are a return guest, and if you're following us or listening to this for the first time, then welcome, and I hope you enjoy this episode and our interview with Drayton Michaels, who I will introduce shortly. We've got an offer for you this week. One of the things that I am extremely passionate about is how we interact, how we move our body through the environment and interact with our dog through our body language. And it's being aware of where you're moving and how you're moving. So how you're holding the lead, where you're looking, how we move around our dog, which then assists our dog in moving around us. I always think it's akin to, remember when you were at school and you're going through adolescence. And when you go through adolescence, you're learning how to move your adult body, so you have those massive growth spurts and your synapses break down, so your neural connections start breaking down in the muscles. And you trip over your feet, or you become clumsy, you bump into people, or you maybe remember that person in your school, or your friend, who would bump into you all the time, okay, and would walk up your heels and things like that. So that's us adapting our bodies, and then we need to learn how to move that adult body through space. So this is one of the things I teach, and I do full workshops on it. If you're interested, then give me a shout if you're interested in hosting me, and always looking for opportunities to travel. And I've got a 2-hour short course on it, and I've got a 10% discount code for you. So it's the discount code POD10, and the link is in the bio. A couple of other things before we move on to our interview. Can you do me a couple of favours? Okay, so first one, what I'd like you to do is your next humour interaction, the next interaction you have with somebody, two actually. Okay, next interaction that you have with a family member or a friend, try and make it as positive and kind as you possibly can, and try and do that with the next time you order a coffee, you go in and you're paying for your petrol or your groceries. You are passing by somebody in the street. Can we try to have as possible a positive an interaction as we possibly can with that person? So the way that we get round division and exclusion in this world is by expressing love and kindness. And if we can do that and be active in doing that, purposive, deliberate in doing that, then we can have these small changes which can then ripple through your community and hopefully beyond. So that's the first thing. So if you could do that for me, I would be massively, massively indebted to you. And the next thing, is your dog there? Is your dog with you just now? Can you look at them, pet them, tell them how awesome that they are and how lucky that you are to have them in your life? And I know that sometimes our dogs can be extremely challenging, but most of the time they do stuff that we like. And I mean most of the time. Most of the time your dogs, when they're living in the house, are sweet dogs. And just let them know that for me. Okay, just let them know. All right. Okay, so we're going to introduce Drayton today. One of the things that I'll have, this is why I get different guests on the podcast, is there are a broad variety of approaches to dog training. I saw Ian Dunbar recently in Manchester, went down to see him, and Ian was the first person that I learnt from. Ian's ethics are, if not identical, extremely similar to myself. Some of the methodology might be slightly different, okay, but if we learn different approaches from people that have the same ethics as us, and then critically analyse what that person is saying, see how it fits in with our model of teaching humans and teaching dogs. So the thing that I have on this podcast is that I don't have anybody on here who I don't agree with ethically. We are ethically aligned, but I want to get other trainers, behaviourists, behaviour consultants, dog walkers, kennel operators and dog boarders, vets, a whole bunch of people. If you're a vet listening to this, I want to hear from you, so get in touch, and I want to try and get some vets on the podcast as well. And there's lots of different ways, so we can teach things in lots of different ways as long as our ethics are aligned. Okay, and that's what we've got today with Drayton. So Drayton does lots of things differently from I do, lots of things, but ethically aligned. All right, and that's what I'm looking for. There's lots of things that Drayton does that I don't do, and I don't do them because it's not the way I do things. But I don't have a problem with any of the ethics involved with what he teaches. Okay, so Drayton Michaels has been working with dogs professionally for 24 years. He's a graduate of the Academy for Dog Trainers in 2007 and completed the Living and Learning with Animals course conducted by Dr Susan Friedman. In 2009, Drayton released the very first documentary about pit bull dogs, the Pit Bull Hoax. It featured Dr Ian Dunbar, Jean Donaldson, Dr Nick Rodman and Diane Jessup. Drayton also featured in the film Beyond the Myth, a Netflix film in 2011, a film about the perils of breed-specific legislation. Drayton has appeared on numerous New York City and New Jersey news programmes, including NBC's Today Show, discussing positive dog training and pit bull advocacy. In 2024, Drayton completed his first book, The Puppy Parents Handbook, a guide to raising a well-trained puppy in the 21st century. Drayton's business, Urban Dogs, works with an average of 4,000 dogs a year in private and group classes. He's a staunch advocate for reward-based training and does not use methods that are fear or pain-based. And I'll link his socials. He's on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok and YouTube, and I'll put all those in the show notes. If you're having any problems with your dogs, remember you can get in touch with us. Give us feedback on the podcast. You can reach out through email, info@glasgowdogtrainer.co.uk. You can get us at Glasgow Dog Trainer on Facebook, Instagram and YouTube. Always looking for new guests, so if you're interested in coming on the podcast, if you think you've got something interested to say, I don't mean if you think you've got something interesting to say, if you've got an approach which may be slightly different from others and it's ethically aligned with what we do, then I'd like to hear from you, so please do get in touch. So let's go on to our interview with Drayton. So awesome, Drayton. Thanks for taking time out of and I know you've got a busy schedule, so thanks for taking time out of your schedule to talk to us today. Where are you in the world?
I'm located in Red Bank, New Jersey, which is a town in New Jersey, pretty much halfway between New York City and Philadelphia.
Okay.
And
you're New Jersey native?
No, actually, born in Massachusetts, but left home pretty young. The first part of my life, I was a musician, so I went out to LA to music school when I was 18, and then I lived in LA, Boston, Seattle, and New York City was a 10-year stint. That's where I got introduced to dogs, was in New York City. I got a dog, and just the way things work, people were like, wow, you're really good. You want to walk our dogs? And I started making money. My ex brought home $1,000 and handed it to me. I said, what the hell did you do to get this? She said, well, that's what we made for walking dogs. And I was like, really? I was like, well, I guess we're going to start walking dogs.
Yeah.
And we just fortunately fell into the right camp early on. Got a copy of Culture Clash, and, it never resonated with us to do harsh stuff.
Yeah.
So, we had a learning curve. We had about a year with our first dog on a prong collar, and then we realized, that's really not the way to go. And again, we were both at the time weren't professionals. The ex went to the Academy for Dog Trainers. I assisted her for about 5 years in the background, just helping run the business, do a lot of dog walking, and then, didn't want to be one of those 40-year-old musicians pretending I was 20. So said goodbye to the business. I still play music. I still write and all that, but I didn't want to be one of those guys. I figured if you're not Mick Jagger by the time you're 30, you might want to reconsider. So I went to the Academy for Dog Trainers and never looked back. Came out with the Pit Bull Hoax, my first documentary in 2009. And I've been helping people and dogs and making media ever since about 2007.
Nice. What instrument do you play?
Depends on the day, but my main instrument is guitar and voice, but I play the heck out of a bass. If it's got keys, I can, I'm not Oscar Peterson, but I can definitely make it, especially with MIDI, I can make it sound like I know what I'm doing. I play music now just to keep my head together. I saw the post, your son is a guitar player, and it warmed my heart. I was like, oh, that's nice. That's great.
don't give it away if you know, but listen to it and let me know if you recognize it.
Okay.
It's just I play it a lot. I play this band a lot, and it was one of actually Max got into the guitar because he heard me playing Pearl Jam and Stone Temple Pilots and
Sure. Love that stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm a
uh,
huge Anglophile too. Like I so much of the music that I love and inspires me is from England or Scotland or Ireland. So like that whole part of the world. Yeah, I love all that stuff.
awesome. So you got a new book out. Tell us about it.
Yeah, Puppy Parents Handbook. It's pretty short, about 60 pages, so you could get through, in about an hour or so. And like I said earlier when we were talking, I want to keep it short so that people can get the information. It's easy to reference. A lot of dog training books, as good as they might be, are pretty long and complicated. And I just wanted to make something really quick. That's why it's a handbook. Puppyhood is a very sensitive time. There's a couple of fear periods that are happening within those 21 weeks of the critical development period. And I really just wanted to make sure that, there was yet another book out there for people to get this information. Again, we've been following each other for a long time. We're both proponents of, proper dog training without the use of fear and pain. And that's what it's based in. And, covers all the basics, everything from house training to general training. There's a nice section on counter conditioning to help puppies be less stressed on leash. As we know, a lot of puppies aren't reactive
Yeah.
because they're little, they got tiny brains, but once they hit adolescence, they get more cognition. I'm sure you probably find this, you get dozens of emails a year. My dog was great as a puppy, and now they're 8 months and they're barking at traffic or they're barking at people. And whether they're fearful or they're frustrated, it's just a good idea to get people on that counter conditioning and get the dog feeling good about being on leash as soon as they can.
So you were saying there about the puppyhood. How long? And this is because I get these, you're saying there about the inquiries you get by email, and people say, "I've got an 18-month-old puppy," and you're like, you certainly don't if your dog's 18 months. But how long does puppyhood last for?
Well, in my education, I was taught that puppyhood ends at 21 weeks.
Yeah.
At about 5 months, they're going into the beginning of the adolescence. Juvenile phase is about a year. Again, some of the larger breeds, they take a little bit longer to get out of their adolescent phase. But that's generally what I was taught. And, it's true. A lot of people use the word puppy, and I have to, gently correct them and say, well, your dog stopped being a puppy at 21 weeks and now they're an adolescent. And, a lot of people ask, well, what's the distinction? I'm like, they have more cognition. And
Yeah.
I just give them the human analogy. You got a 10-year-old kid who's kind of quiet, well behaved, and then
Yeah.
they're 13, and you're like, what the heck happened to my kid?
Yeah.
More
Yeah.
brains, right? He's got more cognition, more experience, so they're going to be a little bit more expressive.
And similarly that our puppy and child then moves into adolescence and they want to do natural adolescent behaviors. So we'll go back, we'll talk a little bit more about what's in your book in a second, but I just want your thoughts on what do we see in that when your dog hits adolescence, and why do we see that?
Well, like I said, it's just more cognition, so they're going to be tapping into the things that they want to do, which is bark, run, jump, dig, chase. I've found, and, all the other references that I've read over the years, most prey drive starts to kick in around 7 or 8 months. And I've seen that in many of the dogs that I've had the privilege of helping families raise from puppyhood into adulthood. There's a dog I post all the time. His name's Ralphie, little Sato dog. And I've known him since he was about 10 weeks. And I distinctly remember at about 7.5 months, he was like, ooh, squirrels, rabbits. And he was very interested. So I started teaching him right away about disengagement. And then a lot of times the other thing that happens in adolescence is dogs don't want to be touched or picked up because as little puppies, they've been kind of malleable and they acquiesce. And then all of a sudden they go to pick up their dog or do something in a tactile way and the dog gets growly. And a lot of times that happens because they have kids in the house. And the
Yeah.
kids, they don't look at dogs like animals. They look at them like cartoon characters. And a lot of puppies don't growl and snap. And then again, they get into adolescence and they might feel a way about that extra tactile. So, whenever I have puppy clients, one of the things I teach them is handling. And I go through that in the book and talk about how it's really important to get your puppy used to having their paws touched. And I always instruct you want to pay for the hold, not the let go, and then just explain how
Interesting.
right. Well, because if you grab and let go and then pay, you're paying for the let go. But if I hold your paw for a second and pay you, now I'm reinforcing the grab and the
Yeah.
hold. And I tell them, look, you're not doing an exam, but this is going to help your groomer, your vet techs, when you need to wipe your puppy's paws down, that kind of thing. If you need to check your puppy's eyes or their ears, all of this handling in the critical development period pays really big dividends. And unfortunately, a lot of times I follow other trainers' work and some positive trainers, and while they're fabulous people, and I'm glad they're out here, I've just found that I'm overly thorough.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that makes me sleep well at night, because I'm like, well, I covered all the bases, so I can have a good night's sleep.
I saw, so Ian Dunbar's doing another, he's doing a lecture series. I think he's probably just finished in his home, but I saw him a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things, and I think it'd be interesting to see what your thoughts are on this. So we probably learned from the same people initially, and then started learning from different people other than those. So they kind of named Gene Donaldson and Ian, Don't Shoot the Dog by Karen Pryor, and
Yeah.
these great references. Then when you were saying there about the point Ian was making, he showed a little video on his Facebook page of a puppy class, and there was nothing wrong with it. And I mean, there was nothing wrong with it. It was really nice training, and he rectified it really well. And what some positive trainers come on and said, you're stressing out that puppy. And he was saying, well, the puppy's already stressed anyway.
Yeah, I saw that little video. Look, I work with 400 dogs a year, and most of them are puppies. I just did a class last night, and it's all small breeds. And two of the dogs play great, but they're what I call mouth first. So when I look at dog play styles, especially puppies, one of the things I look for is, what's the first thing they do when they engage with a puppy? Do they smell the puppy? Do they play bow? Do they bark and run away? Do they handicap? And if you have two dogs that are mouth first, there may be some stress there. The other thing I explain to people about dog play is that it's actually, when it's at its height, it's ritualized aggression. It's like contact sports, whether it's soccer or rugby or football or basketball. You get too many elbows and too many hits, the player might feel stressed by that. And that's where things happen. That's why referees are important.
Yeah.
I've been taken to task over the years about my dog play videos. Either you don't let them play, why are you interrupting them? And what I always explain to people is this. Number one, my job is to make sure everybody in that room feels safe about what's going on. And we know dog trainers like us who really know our stuff, we're aware of things that other people aren't. And you might have, a mom and dad who are really concerned, and then you got another family who's really nonchalant. So my job is to always make sure everybody feels safe and explain it as I go. Never had a fight or a bite in a puppy class. I'm like 18,000 and 0. And I've only had one dust up that was an issue with adult dogs in 20 some odd years. And the reason why I am so, and I tell this to my assistants, your job is to mitigate stress. Number one, you might have a dog who's playing well, but the other dog is getting a little overwhelmed. They're getting tackled too much. I do a lot of tactile, what we call splits, where I'll have my hand sort of in between the two dogs' face. And people always razz me about wearing gloves and wristbands, but I'm like, yeah, I work with a lot of dogs. I don't have time to always take these things off. And I've avoided a lot of bites and injuries. Yeah. Right. So by doing little tiny splits, it helps one of those dogs or both of them be less stressed. Same thing with being tackled. I very rarely time out puppies for rough play, but I will, I'll condition prompts. Whoop, whoop, whoop. I'll make these sounds. The puppies come running. Yes, and treat them just to keep the action moving. I'll throw out a bunch of toys so their mouths are focused on the toy. My job in dog play is to make sure at the end of it, there's no fights, no bites, and any dogs that are stressed are going to be taken care of. Because as we know, when you're talking about a puppy class, you have dogs who don't really have a defined play style yet. They're still learning. So, and my joke is, look, you're the beauty, I'm the brains. Let me handle it.
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Because dogs are good at what dogs are good at, but they're not smarter than us. And a
Yeah.
lot of times, matter of fact, every time I can see something down the road before the class begins, I'm like, okay, I got 3 puppies who are about 10 pounds and I got a puppy who's 25. Let me
Yeah.
put the 25-pound puppy on leash so that they can't bombard these little dogs. And
Yeah.
when it looks good, if I find out, oh, look, the big dog's handicapping, they're laying down, I'll take the leash off. And I always tell my assistants, you need to be no more than 6 inches away from play.
Yeah.
So you got to move. You got to be right there because it happens quick. And I want to make sure that everyone is safe. Every business has a religion, so to speak, and my religion is safety. I'm overly safe to the point where sometimes I annoy people, but I'm like, I've got a couple of stories in my life that are bad. Nobody died or got hurt. But once that thing happened, I'm like, okay, I have to change. I can't do that.
Yeah.
Right. And again, like I'm even like that, I don't have any dogs of my own at the moment, but even with my own dogs, I'm super OCD safe. Like check the gate 6 times, like really make sure the harness is, that's just how I'm built. I'm just built to do things efficiently like that. So, when it comes to dog play, I carry that safety mindset to the nth degree.
And what's interesting there is because, with a variety, and hopefully I'll keep varied voices on as guests on the podcast. And some people will take some of what you say and go, I'll incorporate some of that into what I'm saying. Other people, you will have, what's the word I'm looking for? They'll be along the same lines as you, but nobody's ever told them it's been okay, and they'll listen to you and go, "Oh, I'm not being overly protective of my dog," because they're your dog, they're not somebody else's dog.
Very
It's your
true.
business, it's not somebody else's. If somebody else wants to run it a different way, that's fine.
Well, that's a big distinction. When you're hired to work with someone's dog, you have the responsibility of
Yeah.
making sure that dog is extra safe. And I explain that to my clients. I do a lot of leash walking sessions in downtown Red Bank, New Jersey, where I live. And I stop at every blind corner, get the dog to wait, look real quick, and then proceed or wait. And I explain to people that 1.5 seconds that we just took is the difference between you having the worst day of your life and an average day. Because if there's a bike coming, if there's a stroller coming, if there's somebody carrying something or another dog, and you wait a second and then you mitigate the environment, you're teaching your dog impulse control, and you're also you're helping yourself and your dog be safe. And I mean, look, I'm sure this must drive you nuts. You're driving and you see somebody pushing a pram and they got 3 dogs on their wrist, and you're like, oh my God, what are you going to do if something happens? What are you letting go of, the dog or the baby? Or, their face is buried in the phone and they got the coffee and the leash is halfway up their arm, and you're just like, man, it takes a split second for your dog to decide I'm chasing that squirrel, and you go flying. So, I've seen your videos and you're awesome, and you're obviously a fit guy. You've been doing this a long time, such as myself. And I think that's what the real distinction is between qualified professionals and the average person, is that we look down the road and we say, okay, let me mitigate these potential disasters or problems. And that's honestly, that's why people pay us, is to do the thinking that either other trainers haven't thought of or they themselves haven't considered. And that can really make it. I've had, and I'm sure you've had this too, I've had a number of people text me and say, oh my God, thank you so much for teaching me the recall, or oh my God, thank you for teaching me about counter conditioning. My dog is so much better, or leash mechanics and all the things that we do. And that's what you hope. You hope your clients go home and they listen and they read the stuff you send them. And if, like in my case, sometimes I'll make a video of the session, put it on YouTube, and you just hope they give it 100% every day for their dog, because that's what it's all about.
It's interesting. I had a couple of people. So one guy had he's coming on. I'm keeping him around. He's not. You know what it's like on social media. People overstep the mark and they start, they'll swear at you and all this. So they get banned, immediately. So I think this guy's maybe trying to understand what I'm saying, maybe. But he said to me, all your dogs are on long line when you're working them at a park. I said, it's not my dog. That's the first thing. It's not my dog, right?
Right.
A lot of reactivity and aggression that I'm working with. And I'm not, although that the dog, we're doing everything that we can to make sure it's not going to happen. I can't legislate for everything, and that's what the long line's for. So it's there so that we can intervene. Now, I was working with another couple, young dog, adolescent dogs, 6, 7 months old, and they came back to me in their second session, and they're wonderful. They're doing their work, and and they said he got into a spot of bother the other day, so he get into a skirmish with another dog, just adolescent nonsense, And I said, what happened? He ran off away from us, and then he started sniffing another dog. Another dog took umbrage. And I said, was he on a long line? And he said, no. I said, his recall's not good enough yet to have him off that long line.
Yep.
And it's these things that we're talking about, and it doesn't take that long to do them but you have to do them.
Yeah, it's like dribbling a basketball. You can watch basketball every single day of your life. You can even go to a basketball coach. But if you're not shooting free throws in the driveway after work and you're not watching your film and going, oh, my footwork.
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
I don't expect my clients to go to that level because that's what I do. Like, I watch what I'm doing. I make adjustments. I'm obsessed because people pay me and that's just who I am. That's just how I'm built. If I'm going to do something and it's really important, I'm going to make sure that I am the best I can be. And training dogs for people is really important because not only are you responsible for educating the general public, but you're also responsible for helping this dog get the proper imprint. And then there is, as I'm sure there is in Scotland, there is legalities, right?
Yeah.
And you don't want to, this is why I film everything that I do. I even film when I go to the grocery store. If I interact with a human being on planet Earth, it's on film. I'll erase it if it's nothing, because I know that people can be incredibly unreasonable, and I'm being charitable by using that language, but especially in dog training, I have everything on film, and I tell my clients the reason why I'm filming everything is so I don't forget it. And if there's an issue, all you have to do is call me and I'll play the video.
Yeah.
And we can go right to the spot. Oh, it happened about a half hour. And once I remind people that everything's on film, you'd be amazed at all, like 99.9% of the nonsense is gone because now they're on film. So you can't come back and say, well, you said this and you told, hold on a second. We got it on film. And then they go, oh, never mind.
I spoke to a cop when I was in California a few years ago, and he'd a body cam, and I says, how's that working out for you? And he said, yeah, there's pros and cons to it. He said, but the thing is now everybody films everything. So as soon as I'd gone out for a ride along, so with a gangs unit in one of the cities, and it was, it was a really cool evening. And he said, when you pitch up a call, the neighborhood are out with their mobile phones videoing everything anyway. But what they'll do is they'll only show one angle, or they'll show 30 seconds of the full incident. He says, and if you get your body cam on, you're showing the full context.
I watch a lot of police videos.
Yeah.
And I watch a lot of police dog videos. And I watch a lot of First Amendment auditors who go around and film, and people. It's amazing how people get really upset about cameras. And it's like the whole world, you're on film everywhere. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I know.
But with dog training, I do it, not only because I want to have good content to make educational videos, but I also do it to cover my butt.
Yeah.
Just in case somebody is completely unreasonable, which they can be.
Yeah. Okay, going back to your book. So what else is in your book? What if somebody was buying the book, what are they getting from it?
Pretty much everything that I would teach in puppy class, without the benefit of being there live, but house training, the legwork involved, crate training, all the basic cues, sit, stay, down, stay, touch, hand targeting, leave it, recall, handling, and talk about work to eat toys and how it's really important to have dogs, dissect and chew, why that is not only mentally stimulating, but it helps reduce stress. We talk about how to implement crate and gait training to prevent separation anxiety. Because what I find a lot of times is, people get a new puppy and the puppy's never away from them. And I say, you got to start teaching your puppy that it's okay to be away from you, even if it's 10 feet behind the gate, because one day you're going to leave and you don't want your puppy to have separation anxiety. And I find, unfortunately, a lot of separation anxiety from puppies into adolescence or early adulthood is created because they never taught the puppy coping skills about being alone.
Yeah.
And that's really easy to do. You meet the puppy's needs, play, walk, train, you get them empty, and then you put them in their crate or behind a gate or a little pen, you give them a work to eat toy. And I tell people, when they cry, just say, it's okay, good boy, good girl, and just walk away. You just gave them 30 minutes of your life. Punch out, take a break. And you know what happens? I said, if you do this, needs met, which is, like I said, walk, play, potty, empty, right? You give them a good 20, 30 minutes or even an hour sometimes. When they bark, they are going to realize, hey, this work to eat toy or this bully stick or this food resource that I can chew on is way more reinforcing than barking. I've done this with puppies over the years that come to board with me. First 2 days, by day 3, they're waiting there. They're, oh, here he comes. He's got the Kong. And then I give them the Kong. 20 minutes later, they're sprawled out. They're sleeping. So, that's one of the things that I really want to help people with in the book. And then again, like I said earlier, counter conditioning, teaching people, the simple steps of marking and paying or yes and treat for when the dog is orienting to sudden environmental contrast. So whether it's people, dogs, traffic, or sounds, when they orient, you mark yes and you pay the dog. And, one of the things I express to people when I do this is don't wait for the dog to turn around. Just put the food right in their mouth. Pretty soon, even if you've got an 80-20, because you always want to tell people, look, you're not going to get 100%. You're going to get, at best 80, 90%. But if you start hitting that 80, 85, 90% mark and pay, pretty soon the dog develops an auto disengage. I'm currently working with this little English lab named Luna. Just did 2 walks with her yesterday. I'm seeing her twice a week, twice on Tuesdays, twice on Thursdays. And she's so smart that she's already auto disengaging off all the stimulus. She's just offering the turn back. So I pay her. One of the things I like about this is I tell people it's foolproof. You can't screw this up unless you don't do it. So even if you're late and your dog turns back and you pay him, great, you just reinforce the disengage.
Yeah.
Right. But I tell them, try to get that initial orientation to the truck coming. I tell people, even if you hear the sound of a motorcycle or skateboards and the dog hasn't actually seen it, pay for the sound. It's, paying for sub criteria, which is a big thing that I learned from Bob Bailey. And he talked about a guy named Ogden Lindsley. And I read a bunch of his stuff. He's just one of these unknown guys, Ogden Lindsley, who really just knows his stuff about counter conditioning animals. And so, they talk a lot about sub criteria, paying for the pre-antecedent and not to get into the weeds. But like I explained to people, if you hear a skateboard coming and your dog hears it, if you get 4 or 5 mark and pays in, by the time that weird thing comes along with this human floating by, you've already got 3, 4, maybe 5 seconds of conditioning, and it's going to be a lot less stressful for the dog. So I wanted to go through that because, again, I never get a client who has said to me, oh yeah, my last trainer taught me all about counter conditioning. I know all about marking and paying. And again, there's a couple of really good positive trainers around here and I love them. They're sweet people, but I follow some of their clients, in sessions and I'm like, wow, they didn't teach them this. And that's, that kind of bums me out because it's really important. You can help a puppy so drastically by just marking and paying yes and treat for sudden environmental contrast. Because as we said earlier, by the time adolescence hits, that's usually when dogs become frustrated or fearful or overly excited. And again, a lot of people think counter conditioning is, just for a fearful stimulus, but it's not. It can be a dog who's frustrated and it could be for a dog who's really happy, right? Like the happy.
To break that down a little bit, so we've got, you're out with your puppy, you start hearing the truck, the car reversing, or the skateboard.
Dog barking. Yep. Sure, anything. Any stimulus.
You start paying the dog there.
Yeah, for the audio.
Yeah. So what we're doing is we're starting to, the dog, we've got an option potentially to take the dog's mind off it. We're not trying to distract the dog though, but we're giving the dog something else in the environment, which is competing against the barking.
Yeah, competing motivators. Well, you bring up a good point. A lot of people think that what we're trying to do is get the dog to ignore the stuff. And I'm like, no, that's not even possible, right? Yeah. Because dogs are programmed by nature, fight, flight, freeze. And when they're on leash, they have no flight response. So they're already a little stressed. I equate it to driving. You might be a fantastic driver, but at some point you're like, get me out of this car. I am done. And that's because you don't have the ability to do and go where you want. Right. So same thing with dogs, especially puppies. A lot of puppies do not react on leash because not only do they not have the cognition, but they're also just kind of freezing up a little like, what is this weird thing? Yeah. So if you pay for the orientation to the sound or the sight of, I break it down into traffic, which includes bikes and baby carriages, right? So traffic, people, especially kids, because they go from calm to chaotic in the blink of an eye, traffic, people, dogs, and sounds. Because a lot of times, the dog's going to hear people hammering in the distance and they're going to key in on it. And if you pay for that, then your dog's going to have a better association. One of the problems that I have seen other trainers run into is when the dog is focused on this stimulus, dogs, traffic, people, or sounds, they're trying to get the dog's attention. They're trying to make the dog sit. They're trying to get the dog's name. And what I tell people is that's a waste of time. We can get there, but right now, what you want to do is as soon as your dog goes, huh? What's that? You mark yes and put the food right in their mouth.
Yeah.
1001, 1002, yes, and put the food in their mouth. Count 1001, and just pay them. And then I say at the end of the trial, so the bike is gone, then you can ask your dog for a leave it. Now, there will be videos of me, and you'll see me ask the dog for a leave it before I mark and pay them. And what I explain to people is, well, that's because I need to create distance. And when I go, leave it, bop, 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 I'm getting that dog's attention and I'm creating distance, right? Yeah. And, you know, you can try that. And I encourage people to do that if they need to, because many times the success of leash reactivity is creating distance, mitigating the environment. I just put out a video on my Facebook page where I'm using cars and trees to block the sight because you cut down on the visual exposure. The dog still is like, oh, I saw him, I know he's there, but the cars or the trees are going to block that stimulus. You know, it's what we call antecedent intervention. So you're decreasing the intensity of it, you know, and then they pop out from behind the car and you mark and pay a couple of times. I always remind people, the only thing you can do wrong is cause your dog fear and pain or be irresponsible or negligent, right? If you're kind and consistent, you're using training cues or you're marking and paying, you're in the right path. And then you're going to have better results. And again, better percentages, not perfection. I tell people, just give up the idea of perfection. And people ask me all the time, like, well, you make it look easy. And my response is, well, that's why I charge you money.
Yeah, I've been doing it for 25 years.
Yeah. And, you know, if your plumber comes over and the plumber is looking at YouTube to fix the pipes, you're like, you're fired.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So, you know, you want to hire somebody who can make it look, you know, not only easy, but you get the good results.
Yeah. Now, what was interesting there about what you're saying, so you've got, what tends to happen, I feel, when we're learning how to do this, is people will, you'll say to so an example that you gave there, you asked the dog to leave it. The next thing that you did was you then made the chirping noises with your mouth. Yep. Then there will have been some movement backwards, okay? And then there will have been some leash pressure, bringing the dog with you, right? But
well, there could be.
Yeah.
I have to interject. I have dogs on my waist. I have a hands-free system.
Yeah.
So I would say maybe only 15% of the time am I using my hands in the leash. Most of that leash pressure you see is the dog intrinsically, right? Moving, but I'm not saying that I won't, you know, shorten the leash. But yeah.
So the point of that there is that you've got, you've asked the dog to leave it, and then you've done 3 other things to change the environment, which will help the dog reorientate towards you. Whereas what people will do is, and this is them going through this has worked normally. They say, leave it, it doesn't happen. So they say, leave it again, and then leave it again. Or they might use the chirping noise, but not move. Or they might move and not tell the dog they're going to move. And it's the detail in some of these things that makes it successful or not.
Well, the other thing too is, you know, when I do a leash reactivity session, whether I meet somebody at their home or they come to the Urban Dogs training facility, you know, the first half hour, 40 minutes, I'm priming this dog. So the dog's in my facility and they hear somebody outside and I go, leave it. And the dog comes over and I mark and pay him. Right. Yeah. So I've already, you know, done 50 leave-its or touches or condition all these prompts in like 30 minutes. So by the time I get out on the leash with them, they're like, oh, this guy pays.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then when I meet up with the person again and they're not having the results, I say, well, how much leave-it are you getting out of this context? Yeah. How many times are you marking and paying your dog in the backyard for low-level stuff? Right. So again, the advantage that folks like you and I have is we can see down the road. Right. And again, this is what it probably breaks your heart as well. This is what breaks my heart about people who go and hire some choke collar trainer, is that they're not learning anything other than how to stress their dog out.
Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah, the dog stopped barking because he doesn't want to get cracked in the neck. The dog stopped barking because he doesn't want to be shocked. That's why the dog stopped doing X, Y, or Z. You didn't actually help the dog figure out anything other than, hey, I got to avoid being scared. So you're right. People don't move quick enough. They're not loud enough. They're not happy enough. I just did a class last night. Puppy class graduated. And one of the students, we were doing recall, and she's called her dog and her dog wouldn't come. She called her dog, wouldn't come. I said, okay, stop. Right now, I think maybe I did one recall with this dog in the last 6 weeks, right? I see these people an hour a week, right? So I don't have a lot of experience, but I went, dog name, come, I got stupid happy. I got drunk happy is what I call it. Dog came right over, right? And they just looked at me and go, you gotta get exciting. I said, and you need to practice this, whether it's in your car or in your house, because the day that it happens and you're like, holy crap, the dog got out the front door, right? You don't have time to practice getting stupid happy. So you gotta, it's like muscle memory. And, you know, look, I don't live in the, who's it, right? That's not my mind state as a grown man, but I can pop right in because that's what's required to get the dog to feel good about running over to me. And I, you know, again, and that's the difference between people who are legit trainers and people who are hacks. And whether you're a positive trainer hack or you're a pain trainer hack, the difference is the legit people realize I need to change my behavior and mitigate the environment to the best of my ability to get the best result in a kind, force-free way. And not just get the result, but really teach the dog and help them have a new association, have a new set of sequences. And, you know, sometimes I'll leave a session, I'll be like, wow, I really hope they get this. And fortunately, though, you know, I backload people after I meet with them. I give them an email with session notes. I give them video links that I've created. So as long as they do the homework, I'm like, you'll have better results, you know.
And there's a few things there. So you're saying there, you've got, and we know people they get embarrassed. I feel foolish and making these noises. That's why we need to practice first. So we practice these when there's nobody there, so you're not self-conscious. And then what you were, the stuff about noise in the environment. So I stay in it's a flat apartment building I live in. And when you were saying when the dog orientates towards the sound, but a lot of time we have to train our eyes and our peripheral vision to notice that as well. So Logan's away through into my son's room because that's where the sun hits in the afternoon. So he's way in there to sleep. And but there was a sound in my stairwell in the close. And I noticed it. And he'll have noticed it as well, but he can tell the difference between the ones that are important and the ones that are not. But I've also noticed that. So I heard, now most people, and part of it's because of my previous career and stuff, you hear that noise and I go, is that important or is it not? No, it's nothing to worry about. So when you're out with your puppy and your puppy starts looking at these things and your dog's doing that because of the truck that's gone past, but we have to have that awareness to see the world through our puppies.
Yeah, and I mean, I always, you know, one of the things I ask people when I do private sessions, it doesn't come up too much for puppy clients, but, you know, in the 16-page behavior history form I have people fill out for adolescent or adult dogs, I ask them, what's your occupation? And I always try to help them understand dog training through whatever their occupation might be. I was a bike messenger in New York City. So I learned all about situational awareness. I've lived in big cities where scary things happen. I also spent, you know, 25 years on stage having to help the audience connect and like teach my band members who can't dance how to move. Like, so all the stuff that I've done in my life, I can bring that. And, you know, my first dog, as a matter of fact, all three of my dogs were reactive to something. So I am trained intrinsically to pay attention. And, you know, you bring up a good point. I often remind people there's big ticket items and little ticket items, right? So you might not pay for a person that's just walking. Your dog looks over and they continue gathering scent, but keep your eye on that person, right? Because what if all of a sudden they do something quick, right? So, you know, teaching people to be aware of their environment is something I just do through example. And just explain to them, if you keep a 360, right? Watch your 6, you know, keep a 360 and just prepare. I have a very simple 1-sheet PDF on leash reactivity. And one of the things is, if you don't think it's going to work, bail out, right? If you're like, oh, there's Mr. So-and-so, and I know his dog's reactive, just go the other way, right? Just hang back or go behind a car. But don't think you have to go into situations, because there's no shame in saying, you know what, I don't need to rehearse this. I don't think I do it.
Yeah,
Christ,
of course. Yeah,
I've done it. I've done
yeah,
it so many times, and people have watched me do it, and I'm like, now the reason why we're going to avoid this because I know that person and that dog's going to
yeah,
be really crazy. So we're going to bail out. We're going to create a lot of distance, and we're going to just wait it out. And if your dog looks over there, that's fine, but we need another 50 feet. It's dog math, and you do this long enough, legitimately, you figure out dog math real quick.
yeah,
You're like, okay, I need 20 feet, or I need to go behind this car and I need to get intermittent sightings
yeah.
because it's going to help, it's going to help the dog reduce their stress. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I think we do as positive reward-based dog trainers is based in stress reduction,
Oh
whether
yeah.
it's, teaching your dog, to walk, in a heel or counter conditioning or disengagement cues. A lot of it is stress reduction.
Yeah. So I'm conscious of the time.
Okay,
Um,
no worries.
um, where can people find your book?
It's available anywhere that people buy books. Amazon, Kindle. It just got put up on Ingram Spark, which I believe handles distribution throughout the whole world.
Okay.
So you can get it there. And yeah, there you go. That's where you can find it.
And where can people find your stuff? YouTube, all your other stuff.
YouTube is at Modern Dog Training. Instagram is at Urban Dogs, DAWGS, or at Modern Dog Training. Facebook, Drayton Michaels. And I mean, I'm on X, Twitter as Pit Bull Guru, but I don't really do too much there. Probably going to do a lot of stuff for October because here in America, I don't know if it extends anywhere else, but October is Pit Bull Awareness Month. So I'll
Okay.
probably do a bunch of videos and educational stuff for that on X.
Nice. So send me that through and I'll stick it in the show notes for this so that people can look you up and find
I
your stuff.
actually did. I already sent it to you.
Awesome. Perfect.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say before we finish up?
Well, actually, I had a question for you. I was wondering what's the culture like in Scotland for dog training?
Um, it was getting better until we got TikTok and Instagram, Facebook,
So
so
you think social media has definitely
yeah,
has it
without that.
created a lot of fake dog trainers?
Yeah, so people that can, yeah, so I was a copy.
No, I didn't.
Right, so I was a copier for a long time. We can, and I learned a lot through my about behaviour, and I remember the story I tell about this is we were young cops, we were in uniform, and it was a Friday afternoon in the summer. It was hot. It does get hot in the summer sometimes in Scotland, not often, but it does, right? So it'll have
Okay.
been 75, 80 degrees, which I know is not really hot. But when you get body armor and a full kit and you're running through the streets and you're trying to, it was a guy who was breaking into somebody's house. So we'd been chasing this guy through the back gardens and all that for 15 minutes before we finally caught him. So we're all harassed and sweaty, and he'd put up a little bit of a struggle, but not much, and it was kind of minimal the amount of we had to arrest him. And the detectives arrived, right? And I remember Willie, this the old detective, and he wasn't that old, but he was just experienced. And he says to the guy, "In you come, pal." He says, "Do you want a drink of water?" And this is to the bad guy. Gets him in the back of the car, and he says, "Can I unzip your jacket because you're going to be hot and stuff?" And we're all like, "What are you doing, trying to be this guy's pal?" you know. And because we've been blown out our backsides chasing this guy for the last 10, 15 minutes. And he said to us afterwards, um, we he says, "I'm going to go and interview this guy." He says, "And I want him telling me what he'd done, and I want to tell him about all the other crimes that he's done before as well." He says, "So we can get them cleared up." I says, "And the only way that I can do that is by building rapport with him." Right? Now, those instances like that started planting the seeds for me about, all right, okay, so you don't just need to hammer people all the time, in order to get them to do things. So we know that we can hammer. It doesn't take a rocket science or anybody that's intelligent or kind to hammer an individual to get them to comply. It takes intelligence and compassion and knowledge to do it the other way, and we were seeing progress until, yeah, social media has massively enhanced yank and crank dog trainers because they see it and they pump them out, and then they see people on television and they see other dog trainers. I can do that. I can bully a dog into doing this, that, and the next thing. And unfortunately, our dogs are we have reared them over the last several thousand years to be so compliant that we get away with this. But
Some of them.
Yeah, some of them. Yeah, some
Some
of
of
them.
them aren't. Some
Yeah,
of them don't. Some of them don't learn real
yeah.
quick.
But you
Some of
can't do it with a
them.
bear, and you can't do it with a tiger,
Well,
and,
that's
or a
that's what I
moose.
would say. If you wouldn't train a lion that
Yeah,
way,
yeah,
don't train it. And that's why they do it because, like when I saw Bob Bailey, he said, when you work with an animal that can kill you, you're not wafting the food. You got to be real careful with
careful
that
not
food because they'll just take your wrist off.
I'll have
So
that, thanks. Yeah,
and a lot of people, unfortunately, consumers, they look at it like, well, just make the dog do it.
yeah,
I have to tell them, well, yeah, we can get there, but your dog's really scared right now. And I didn't create that. I show up in the middle of your life with your dog where they're at.
yeah.
And if I tell you, look, I just worked with this great little 7-month-old golden retriever, and they show up, they get out of the car, hey, how you doing? And I give the dog a treat, and then I reach again, and the dog's like, he's all shy. And I said, oh, okay. I make a note. I'm like, okay. And great dog. Like he's young, but he's, for whatever reason, I don't know, but he's got this
Yeah.
thing being reached for. And I explained to people, I'm like, you got to be careful with this. So we started to work on that right away. Like, I'm going to reach and pay for the next hour and a half that I'm here. I'm going to teach your dog that when I reach, you're safe. And the other question I wanted to ask is, I was under the impression that Scotland had banned shock collars. Is that correct?
No, so without getting a big thing about our politics, so there's the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, which is England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, right? The UK government, it sits in Westminster, so that's our Prime Minister. So who is it just now? Oh, Keir Starmer, right? Who just get elected in, right?
Okay.
Now, but some things are devolved. So in Scotland, like health and education is devolved, policing is devolved, but defence isn't,
Right.
So a few years ago, and it's complicated. Helen, my partner, goes through to the Scottish Parliament, and she's advocating, so she lobbies them. She was a lawyer, and she lobbies for increased animal welfare. Trying to get prong collars and shock collars banned. So the Scottish government, this was probably 5 years ago, I think. They announced that they were going to do it, and it's deep seated, and there's so many layers to it. Scotland voted to remain in the EU, whereas with the rest of the UK as a whole, there was that 52-48 vote, but over 60% in Scotland voted to remain. Now, because of that, the Scottish government are still looking towards Europe for the future. So they're trying to, I think there's some of the stuff that's going through is trying to be in line with European law to make things easier for us. That's one of the things. And they brought in some legislation basically saying that the wording isn't strict enough. You could apply it and say that under that wording, you couldn't use a prong collar or electric collar, but it doesn't specifically outlaw these tools. So, but there's been no test case yet. So even though there's new legislation to say an abusive use of a training tool, which we know, or in our opinion, they are abusive because we can do it other ways. So, and Wales banned them. They banned them first. England under Boris Johnson announced that they were going to do it, but it's not happened yet, and I don't think it will happen. So yeah, that's kind of where we are with it.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an uphill battle. My thing is, I always remind people, if we can get the cruelty laws to have an addendum to include pet dog training, because I'm sure you're aware, but there's a lot of people here in America who want dog training regulated, and I don't want that at all. The last thing I want to do is have the government telling me what to do with dogs, or some unreasonable client finds out, oh, there's a board I can go complain to, and now I got to go talk to, right? And a young lady, she was very nice. She contacted me earlier this year, and she wanted to talk to me about regulation, and I said, well, I can stop you right there. I'm not a fan, and here's why. I said it's not going to do anything but legitimize all the pain trainers.
Exactly.
Because it's a money grab. The state's going to be like, dog trainer's a dog trainer. Just pay us your $500 a year. They don't care. And, if that day should ever arise and there is some sort of board and I get called before it, I'm just going to show up with my iPad and hit play and sit back and be like, there's the session. Watch it. That's why I film everything. I'm not too worried about it, but it'll
never happen. It'll not
I don't
happen
think
in our
either.
lifetime here or
and I don't think it's going to happen because politicians have so many other things they're
yeah.
worried.
Yeah.
Like the last thing they care about is dogs and dog training.
No.
You know, and somebody said, well, veterinarians are going to be on the board. I said, great. In the last year, 12 vets recommended shock collars and prong collars and spray bottles. So don't impress me by telling me vets are going to be involved.
And the thing is, I know that we're getting slightly off topic, and I'm aware of the time. It's like, so I'm going to do a podcast on, because we get new breed specific legislation in here in the beginning of the year. And I looked at the stats. There were 24 fatalities in the UK from dog bites or dog attacks last year. And these two things go together. It's significant that dogs are biting them, but statistically insignificant. You know, so the government can throw out a piece of legislation which looks as if they're doing something to curb the sensational headlines.
Right.
It doesn't make any impact on whether we're going to get dog fatalities or not.
Well, that's the thing. Breed-specific legislation that's happened in America has not reduced dog bites.
Yeah,
they stayed the same. And again, I don't know if you're aware of Karen DeLees, but she wrote a book called The Pit Bull Placebo. I interviewed her and used a lot of her research for my documentary, The Pit Bull Hoax. And there's always the same criteria, and it's had been the same criteria for over 150 years.
Yeah.
Dogs not spayed or neutered, dogs left alone with children, dogs housed and chained all the time, dogs roaming loose, multiple dogs, domestic violence, and some sort of abuse. There's never been a dog who's well-trained, well cared for, maul or kill a person. And most fatalities are elderly and kids. Because guys like me and you, we love dogs, but I'm going to kick the shit out of this dog if it attacks me.
I know. Yeah.
And what happens to elderly people is they're older, they can't move, and kids scream. Yeah. Women scream. Now I might be screaming, but I'm like, look, you mother, I'm going to take care of that. And that's, we may get bit, but I doubt I'm going to die.
Yeah.
Right. Because we're going to fight back.
Yes.
Right. And most people who get killed by dogs are either small children, and that's a parental issue. And that's a negligence issue about why are these dogs running loose? And every era has their demon dog. The 70s, it was the Doberman. Back in the 1800s, it was what was it? One of those big black dogs. I can't think of the name of but there's always there's always the same criteria, and it's panic policy is what it is. It's panic policy. All
awesome.
right, John.
Okay, we'll finish up here.
I appreciate it. I really do.
Okay.
Yeah, give me a heads up when it's going to air.
Will do.
All right, buddy. Take care. Have a great day.
You too.